The following is a conversation I had with Shea Myski, the productivity coach based in Pomona, New York. I hope you enjoy. Remember to like, share, and subscribe.
The big way, my name is really Yehoshua, so that would be Yehoshua.
But you go by Shea.
But I go by Shea.
When was the last time you called Yeshua?
Called by somebody Yoshua,
Like
probably
who
on the
you
phone with maybe even a telemarketer.
Yeshua? He'll pronounce your full name.
On the phone with some legal stuff, That's
I had a whole conversation with a telemarketer who tried to sell me a mortgage. Had a whole conversation about privacy and like where'd you get my information, and like I was asking him like how would you feel if somebody reached out to you with your private information. It was a little strange because he like basically ended the conversation being like just drink a Coke and smile.
By the way, your thing is what's the come on the comedian, the big like
Which one? Joe Rogan?
no, not a podcaster, but he has a show like the highest grossing show for comedians, definitely.
I only know Tim Dillon.
No,
Ever heard of Tim Dillon? He's hilarious.
No, he's a Jewish guy.
Seinfeld?
Yeah. So in Seinfeld, he has somebody call him, a telemarketer. Oh, you know what I'm talking about? Let's say the telemarketer calls him and says, "Hi, yeah, whatever." Says, "How about you give me your number and I'll call you back?" He says, "No, I can't give my number." "Oh, because you don't want me calling you at home." Me too.
Right. What do you do with telemarketers when they call? You just don't pick up.
I just or I hang up. Depends. Sometimes if it like I'll sometimes say I'm sorry, I'm not interested. Like whatever. It depends what mood I am in.
And when you are interested?
I don't think I was ever interested. I don't even listen.
So what do you think the business is like? How do they make any money? Like people are paying these people to call. So like, where are they making money?
I guess it's a type of person. I mean, that's why they say that I'm losing my words over here. Are off like when they sue to see we're about 49% to 48% Trump. What's it called?
Polls?
The polls are off because it's basically off by the type of people that answer polls. Now they already, knowing statistics, they already build that in to the equation. But for sure, it makes a difference. How businesses are going to get certain people, I guess. So maybe sometimes if I'm bored, or the truth is, I've heard this from some big sales guy. He said people only change; they buy from you, meaning they switch from somebody else. The type of business, there's two types of business. Businesses that I'm selling you something that you don't have yet. You usually don't drink, and I'm telling you, try this. This is good. Or usually you have Maker's Mark, and I'm telling you, try this one. Believe me. And so when I sell you this and you already have one that you usually use, you have to be angry at the one you use right now. And they say if you aren't angry, you have to make you angry. How's it taste when it goes down your throat? Really? Do you like that it hurts while it goes down your throat? Try this, right? So, so I guess if telemarketers call in the right second, I know of a sale in the company I worked for was a sale where tens of salespeople went in, most experienced salespeople try to get that store, and they couldn't get the sale. And then somebody walked in, a really inexperienced new salesperson, and he just walked in and said, "Hi, he tells the person by the registers, "Your boss here?" He says, "Yeah, in the back." He walks down to the back, says, "I'm selling what?" He says, "Yes, I'm coming." He had a problem last day or two or whatever. He was angry and he bought. That's it.
It's all about timing.
Maybe.
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, look, if I don't need something, then I'm not buying it. I don't care what it is. Like, also, I don't like when you're calling me in the first thing in the morning. Like, I don't want to talk to the telemarketer. It's just strange. I just find the whole thing strange.
Maybe sometimes people are bored or something. I don't know.
Yeah, they just want somewhere to spend money.
No, I'm talking about the people that answer the telemarketer. You make me laugh because where I work, they tried telemarketing for some time. The guy was sitting behind the wall of my office. He started like 9 o'clock in the morning, and all I heard was like curse words the whole time. Every time you hear bang and curse word, bang, it's like. Where
did you used to work? Where's that place?
In the credit card processing industry. It's a big company, a Jewish company.
And how long were you there?
I was there for 7 years.
7?
Yeah.
And like, did you get like to a certain level?
Yeah, I started off as the gonna be controller, so I first started off training in every department in the company, doing some bookkeeping, some responsibilities, then controller, and then I became CFO, responsible for accounting, and then I got taxes. I don't remember what, then I got legal, or maybe reporting came first. So I got reporting, and then I got legal and compliance. I always, every year I was like, give me another department, I'll take it.
Did you like it?
Like it? Did I enjoy it is what you're asking, maybe.
Did you wake up in the morning and want to
go? Yeah, I did. I did enjoy my job. And what's interesting is what I'm doing today is I do a few things, but they all involve empowering people, meaning executive coaching and then training people in productivity. So they're both empowering people. And what I realized we sold the company, before we sold the company already, I realized from each buyer that I'm gonna basically be let go. They're not gonna keep me. And I was wondering, what do I want to do now? Get another CFO job, and it didn't talk to me. I was like, what do I enjoy the most? And I realized that what I enjoyed the most was coaching the managers that worked for me, the employees in the departments, or sometimes, during just mincha schmoozing, I would coach employees, and I would coach many other managers who would come to me, how do I deal with this and that? And I enjoyed, so first the coaching looked like advice giving, but slowly it turned into asking questions and being curious, because I realized that advice giving wasn't, even if they were interested in listening, it wasn't really giving them anything. And also, on my way home, it would be like an hour and a half to 2 hour drive from Brooklyn after I moved to Pomona. And on my way home, I remember driving. I basically told anybody that I wanted to talk to, I would tell them, let's talk between 6 and 8 or 6:30 and 8:30, depending when I left, so call me. So I basically would talk to people on the phone non-stop, and it was mostly people, the annual race conversations. I had my repeat customers, and it was first, race conversations or how to become more valuable at work type of conversation. Because when that's where I did a lot of coaching. I also, first was advice giving, or business owners called me, it was advice giving, and I realized that the business owners called me 3 months later with the same question, and I was like, where did you lose me? I mean, you really got me when we spoke on the phone. And I realized that their issue is not the advice. They know their business better than I do. I'm not the genius I think I am, that I can sit in credit card processing and know their business better than them. Or no sales. I'm not a salesperson, but what I can do is coach, get that person's brain to work for him.
You said a lot there. Well, let's unpack. First of all, what do you mean by empower people? What does that mean?
So I'll tell you about on the way home. A lot of people came to me with, I guess I was CFO of a big company, and it seemed like I would know what market prices are and how much of a raise they could ask and how to ask for raises, which was true in some sense. And first thing I would do was ask the person what job were they really doing. And sometimes I would tell them, let's first go from a perspective of how much you're worth. You're getting paid more than you're worth. So now let's see if we can ask for a raise anyway, and how much raise to ask, because you want to make as much money as possible. Why not? But you can't shoot high because you're not worth high. If he lets you go, you're not finding a job for that amount. And that would be empowering the person to be able to. It's hard for a person. You're making $80,000 a year, and I'm telling you, you're worth 60. And being able to say that in a certain way, getting them to see that, coaching them and empowering them to do more at their job. The simplest thing of empowering was in the company. The guy's still there, so I want to people may know. Okay,
It's okay.
if you figure it out,
no
you
one's
figure it
no
out.
one's listening. It's fine.
I think we're going to have thousands of viewers or millions. I don't know where we go.
Right now,
But
between us,
basically-
there's nobody listening.
Okay,
It's just
so
us.
basically this guy asked me, like, how did you reach, you get CFO? It's a big company. I was like younger than 30 probably, and I started college at 25, right? So it was like pretty beginning. And like first I was thinking, like, what am I supposed to tell him? It was like as if there's some magic pill. I have no idea how it happened. I had mazel and siyata d'shmaya, and I worked hard. I have no idea what exactly it was, And I told him that, so I thought about something, and I said that you get paid for responsibility, because I realized that I don't work that hard or that much, and I still get paid 4 times as much as the guy working really hard that works, that's on the bottom of the totem pole, right? So I said I get paid for responsibility. It's not about work. So the more responsibility you take, the more you're worth. The question is, how can you gain responsibility? Now, I knew his manager. His manager was kind of micromanager or control, like had to make sure everything. So his manager didn't really give his employees space to grow. And it was something, meaning I coached his manager too. That was one of the things. He's like, it wasn't something we were working on, but.
So you're telling the manager, don't be a micromanager.
I noticed it. I didn't even deal with it. He had other things to deal with. But what happened was, I told this guy, there's a yin and a yang in terms of work. What happens is, we all want to be lazy, you could say it, but we all want to make it easier for ourselves and better for ourselves. And so if I notice that something is taken care of, I'm going to stop taking care of it just because I start trusting it. So I told this guy, please, what you can do is, saying please like I'm trying to talk nicely as if I'm talking to the camera, but it's just to you. So I told this guy, you can start taking on responsibility and let your manager know, I got this. What's going to happen is, he's going to stop micromanaging, not because he wants to. He wants to micromanage. He wants to make sure. And I don't know if he was trying to protect his position, like why he was micromanaging, or was it just. But the fact is, what happened with this employee was, it was a big team. He was from the newer employees, and I guess he started doing it. And what happened was, the next time, I don't know if it was 3 or 4 months later or 2 months, I remember it was a short time period, I was like, wow. The manager left on vacation, and he said, please email tech support, like please email the main department, and then if there's no answer, if it's something, if it requires more attention, please email. And it was this guy. And I was like, wow, like this guy made it. So now this guy manages, or I don't know how they name it, but he manages that department these days. Yeah, he took the full responsibility, and that's a little of advice giving, but really there was some coaching in it. But mainly look at it this way: I was empowering him to use himself to a bigger extent, right? To make more value out of what was given to him.
So right, when you tell somebody that they can take more responsibility, that they have the ability to take more responsibility, that's an empowerment. That's empowering them.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember him in the conversation. He was like, "Oh yeah, that works, right?" And you see his shoulders like moving back a little, like he got this. And then seeing the results it feels good. It feels good in the moment, and it feels good. And sometimes it doesn't, because the person, when you aren't empowered around something, it's for a reason, right?
What do you mean by that?
Meaning, if you're not empowered, whatever you're weak about, it's because there's something blocking you over there, right? So let's say you think, you think you can't play football, right? When really I know that you have the arm, you have everything, right? You don't play, but you won't go and play football. So why do you think you can't play? There's a reason. So I can't just empower you and say, oh, you could play football, you're going to do it. Now that thing is going to protect itself, right? So it's not like, So what happens many times is that I can try to empower you, and I don't get I don't get the response I want. I don't get you to play football. At least definitely in the short term. So it can sometimes be challenging, but it is, to me, I'm a creative person, and which is interesting. Being a CPA and a creative person doesn't really go together, even a CFO. But I'm a creative person, and where I go to is figuring out how that guy can. I lost my train of thought.
You find the ability to.
So what can I do? How can I get that person to see himself beyond that blockage, right?
Right,
And there could be so many different ways. So it's using my creativity. Same thing to empower, right? So how can I use my creativity? And I say it in a little bit of a rude way, that I'm a manipulator, because I manipulate your brain to go to places it doesn't want to go to. Like, I'm going to ask the questions, and really I'm manipulating you. Now, obviously, we use manipulation as it's a bad term, because usually manipulation is used when you don't want to be manipulated. If somebody comes and talks to me and comes to my office, they're basically telling me, Shea, please manipulate me. So now I have to figure out what's the best way to manipulate that guy into realizing something.
You're talking a lot about like human nature stuff and like how the brain works. Like, where's your training? Like, how do you know this stuff? Where is it from?
Oh, interesting. So I'm not sure what your question is around how the brain works.
How do you know the information? Like, how do you know that this thought of like the inability to do something like takes a life of itself? It seems like that's what
I did some coaching courses. Those are courses. I don't think I got that much. I was always intuitive, and I did a few different trainings, psychology-based trainings. So I'm trained in psychodramatic body work, or like different such like little parts. I'm not trained as a therapist, and as a coach, I make sure to differentiate myself, where I'm not fixing your issues at all. Well, my goal here is to kind of notice the issue and then move on. I want to make people money, right? So that's the thing. As much as it takes to make you money, that's all I care about. And I send people to therapists many times. I mean, most people come to me, haven't seen a therapist yet. So many times, like, but my wife, whatever. I said, how does it affect your business? And then at some point, it's like, no, but that bothers me. And it's like, for that, you're gonna have to see a therapist.
So would you say you're like a financial coach?
They say on the corner of happy and healthy, Walgreens. I say I'm on the corner of psychology and consulting, right? So I know business. I'm not a coach that, like, I've been there. I've been through from the bottom line to the top not, but executive. I mean, right now I'm at the top of my one-person business, secretary. So, but right now, but small business. And I kind of, somehow use psychology-based methods, which I read up on a lot. And also, don't forget about 10 years of personally being in therapy, going through those challenges myself. So, actually, the biggest challenge for me is where I have my biggest win, so to speak. My biggest challenge in work life was I was a bookkeeper for 2 years. Didn't do well as a bookkeeper. I was always feeling bad about myself, dreading going to work, just hating it. And I was like that's work. Like, finally I got married, that's work. Now the truth is, that guy should have fired me long before. I'm not sure if he didn't have the guts to fire me, or like he was related to me, or maybe sometimes I was able to help him with my smarts and creativity. But I mean, I made life hard for him as a bookkeeper. And at some point I got my accounting degree, and I went to work for an accounting firm. I wanted to get my hours for a CPA, and it was like the future accounting. That's what I'm going to do. And again, first I was just doing very simple, stupid tasks like staple the returns, or then I started having responsibilities. And again, I was like, talking to my wife, and like, I just can't take it. It's not for me. And I got the job at the company I worked, Fidelity credit card processing, and I actually got an offer from somewhere else, and then somebody told me to go, after that offer, go down to Fidelity. But that offer came from one of the partners in the accounting firm I work. Said, I have a controller thing for you. I think it'll be more up your alley, because I was always complaining to him how much I hate my job. He wasn't my direct manager, so I went to work in Fidelity. Now I really don't remember how I got here. What was your question? I said what was the most impactful thing. So when I went to work in Fidelity for the first few months, I went around to each department, and I sat in each department and said, and understood how that department worked, and I actually was able to show up as this, like, I was like the star of the show, because you go in and it's like, how about change this or do this, and it's like, wow, and at some point I got trained in every department, the bottom line role, and the point was, because I was going to be the future controller, they wanted me to have a real holistic view of the business. I started doing, like, some of the bookkeeping tasks fell on me, and I started hating my job again. And it was like hard, and I was missing things, and I was like just all over the place. And this was just the beginning. Like, I barely had anything yet. And I don't remember if it was my wife or if it was me, but it was like, Shea, like, this is the third time you have the same thing. Like, and I was like, I have to provide for my family. How's it going to happen? I don't know what changed, how it changed. Somehow I learned to work and like my job. Okay, I didn't even know what the problem was and what the solution was. I know a few years later, a different manager at the company I worked at Fidelity, came to me and he says, like, Shea, I want your job. He says, why? I said, like, because I'm sure you make more than me, and you barely work. I said, I barely work. Why do you say so? He says, you sit at lunch. You look like you look like calm like anything, and you schmooze with anybody. When I come to meet, when we meet for anything, he was a manager, and so we meet for anything. You don't look at your emails. You have endless time, and you come to meetings, the bigger meetings, and you always come on time. You leave, and you even have time afterwards to schmooze. You never have like calls and emails and any emergencies and you're an executive, right? So I told him, actually come to my office. It's end of year, and I showed him, like, I had a bunch of tasks that were on my list, and he was like, so how are you so calm? So then really he didn't ask how are you so calm. So how do you do it? Tell me how you do your things. Show me. So I showed him Outlook and how I do it, and a few days later, a different manager comes to me. He says, well, this guy told me to come to you. He says and then at the third manager, I kind of started really realizing that I have, like, that there's something, there is a logic behind it. There is, some concepts behind what I'm doing. And I started, like, notating them so that, and no, this is before I notated them. In my head, I was like, wait, it's because of this and this and this. And then I went to the third manager, I remember, and after I had spoke to him, he tells me, did you ever read the book Getting Things Done by David Allen? And David Allen is the guru in productivity. And I was like, no. So he says, so read that book. I think it's a good book. And I sat in his office and helped him, read the book. And after I read the book, I was like, it bothered me a lot. It killed me, because it's like, this guy stole all of my work, right? And I read the book 2 or 3 times, and then I was like, something is different between his book and me. And I wasn't, and then I realized that's where I got, like, the concepts was like, he deals with productivity when I don't really deal with productivity directly. I deal with the concepts behind it, that I feel like if people are calm, they will be productive automatically, because people like being productive. So I don't tell people to do things like David Allen tells people, do this, 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 and this, and this, and then you'll be successful. And I think it's 100% true, And however, I've asked, it must be more than 100 people by now, because I always ask. I'm saying 100 people privately, forget about in groups, but like, did they do David Allen? Did they read David Allen's book? So I've met at least 100 people said that they, not I asked, at least 100 people said that they read David Allen's book. And when I asked them, and they started implementing it. So it's not just they read and started implementing it. And when I asked them how long it took until they got out of it, right? So most people within a few days were gone. There were a few people that held on to it for 2 weeks or something like that, a few weeks. And then one person said that for 2 months he actually followed it. But then, and he couldn't, I told him to go back to it. Like, why are you coming to me for productivity if something helped for 2 months? Says you just can't. There's one person that's on that I heard a speech of him. He's very, like, he gives speeches. He's on LinkedIn. I don't know. I forgot his name now. Or if I forget his name. And he basically said that he followed David Allen's book and it worked for him, and that's what made him successful. So
of the 100 people you spoke to,
it's
one
more
guy.
Yeah. So there's very low success rate, and
we don't want David Allen to sue us, though. So
and no. So what I think is that, first of all, David Allen, and he probably knows what it's based on, meaning the concepts and the way of looking at things. I don't know how you say ashkafa in English.
Way of looking at things,
Perspective. There's a certain that once you have those concepts and perspective, you're automatically going to do things a different way. Now, David Allen's way is one way, but you could have 1,000 different ways that are all within the realm of those concepts and perspectives. Now, if you just happen to have the right job and the right personality, and and your days don't change much in terms of your mood, then you follow David Allen's book, you'll do great. But I find that people change, jobs change, moods change, responsibilities change, everything changes. And so when you know the concepts and then you just adapt, it's just like, it's like, so basically if you follow David Allen's book, you're going to be calm all day, for sure. But if you know you have to be calm all day and you learn what it takes to be calm, then you may sometimes get a work day that's going to be very close to that kind of work day, but you may have many different work days. And you may follow very little of it, and meaning even some little following is going to give you some perspective. I think your question was like,
how did you create these ways of understanding the human being and the thoughts process and the brain?
So yeah, in terms of this thought process, I actually trained one person that had ADD, and he went to a psychologist, a doctor, for his ADD, like to deal with his ADD. And after a few weeks, the guy comes back and he says, you didn't tell me that you're trained in ADD. Like as if, he figured out how I got my program, because his doctor told him that the guy must be trained in ADD. And I told him, actually, I'm not. And I said different. I said, yeah, on my own bones, I got trained. So I realized, I had extreme ADD. So if two things happen at once, it really, it's too much for me. I just can't take it. So which means I either fall apart, or my brain very quickly disintegrates and doesn't really work, or I hate my job, all of that. So what I say is the reason I came up with the program. I didn't sit and think up of a training. So I didn't say, but I have a training around this, but I didn't think up of how do I come up with some training. I figured out how to put bread on the table. That's what I figured out. And then I made a training out of it. And people without ADD, I had the necessity, and I say also is not necessarily am I more creative or smarter than you, but necessity is the mother of invention, and I needed it, and I figured it out. I didn't even know what I figured out. And you don't need it, because you're able to go home every day and be stressed out, and and you keep your job, because things maybe they fall through, but it's only once in a while, and or if they don't, you're stressed out, and life works. So you don't figure it out. It's not necessary. So that's one place where I can say my personal perspective, my personal things I went through is what really got me that perspective and being able to train people. Because many times people ask me, are you trained by in productivity? So there are many different productivity trainings. And I say no. And I'm always curious to hear what their trainings are about and how it is. And I haven't yet heard that training all the trainings are one way. How can we make you into a more productive person? Do it like this, eat the frog, the hardest thing in the beginning of the day. There's a book, Eat the Frog, Eat That Frog.
Eat the frog.
Yeah, it's like the first thing, there's a lot of different methods but nobody comes from the other side. So the main thing first I start is by teaching them the concept. So let's say, and this is a very good thing, I have 1 million sticky notes. Now nobody comes to me saying I have 1 million sticky notes and that bothers me. They say I have a ton on my head or I'm always stressed out. And I tell them about the 1 million sticky notes. Now let's forget about 1 million sticky notes. I tell them about one sticky note, okay? And or one file, like I have a file on the table, an extra file that's sitting, or a set of files on the table, desk. I'm talking about a guy that's pretty on top of the ball, right? So I tell them, why do you have that sticky note over there? So I tell them first remove the sticky note, and they'll say no, I don't even look at it, like it doesn't bother me. So I say, so why do you have that sticky note? Because it's something I need to remember. And how are you going to remember? By seeing it. I say, and how many times a day do you think you see it? And the answer is like thousands. So basically your brain goes through the process of seeing the sticky note, which is noise, a concept of noise, and that's one stressor, and then deciding that it's not going to deal with it at the moment, which is choice, also another stressor. Those two things, just it's micro. Like I call them, let's say with choice, I call them micro choices. I'll tell you in a second. But this is split second. But this happens thousands of times throughout the day. So it's not about stealing time from you. It's about stealing brain space. When I say brain space, I mean brain energy. So the brain has so much energy, and we'll talk about that, because I have a lot to say about that in a minute. And you're going to ask me how I know that, and that's just Google, like everybody else would do. And then they would like take off the sticky note and the files off the desk and say, yeah, it helped them, right? So now, my 3 stressors, there are 4. 4 ones emotional stressors. They sit on your head constantly, and which you can do something about, but again, I'm not a therapist. It's not my main thing I deal with. It's choice, noise, and change. So choice is decisions, and sometimes micro decisions. Like if I see these 2 glasses and I want to use them, I'm going to actually choose this glass. Now, it's going to be maybe an easy choice, but think about if the glasses would be here like this, right? Which glass do I take? It takes some kind of microsecond for me to choose. I choose one of the glasses for some reason. Maybe this is easier or whatever. It doesn't have to have a reason, but I have to now make a choice which glass I'm using. And that's a micro choice. So people have 2 pens on their desks, two pads on their desks. Let's say you leave your stapler and all of your supplies on the desk, which I hate, because how often do you have to use your stapler? And but if you have more than one, then you're choosing. Now, by the way, if you have your phone on your desk and it's on a different side of the desk every day, you're choosing where to look for your phone every day. It's like have your wallet in your pocket. If you always have it in the right pocket, you don't have to think about it. You go to your right pocket. It's like muscle memory. If you have it in different pockets every day, your brain makes a choice about which pocket to check first, right? So those are micro choices. So that's choice, noise, and change. Change would be if I start even just talking about something else now, then coming back to this conversation, besides for the fact that studies show it can take 7 to 22 minutes to get back in the same way as we were before, it's a drainer. So I call it a mess. Mental energy sucker or mental energy stressor, but they somehow suck out your mental energy. I wonder if you have any questions, because I want to go into the other thing that's very interesting.
Let's go.
So what's interesting is
Take me for a ride.
I should take you for a ride. I guess next time it will be the opposite direction. Okay. So the thing with mental energy stressors or mental energy suckers is like this. Every muscle that we have, okay, you might get me wrong because I did not prepare for this right now, but I think they have the fuel for the muscle is called ATP. That's what I think, and I'm going to go with ATP. I may be wrong. Maybe it's APT.
You're correct.
I'm correct. ATP.
Sugar, yeah.
So it's ATP. It's not sugar, but it's ATP. Now it gets it from. So we'll see in a second. So if my muscle has a certain amount of ATP, when that ATP gets depleted or starts getting depleted, it's going to take glucose, or actually it's glucose that's kind of a little bit metabolized already, or like processed already.
You're also a biologist.
I'm not. So this is just Googling. I was actually Googling. I decided I was starting to write a book actually, and I started writing a book. I was like, I'm writing a book. I can't just make up stuff. And these are all. You asked me where I know these stuff. Like really, they're all made up. And then I found places to back it up. So I'm like, I have to look at really how the brain works and to see if it's real. You know what? I'll tell you the first way I came. There was a first thing I came up with, and then I realized that most scientists disagree with it, and then how I transferred to my second way of thinking about it. My first way, so it starts the same. Each muscle has its own storage of ATP, right? Of glucose, and the ATP takes glucose as needed. Now, if you use your muscles, now the glucose drops in, you know, every second another drop. It's not going to drop in more glucose because you're using more glucose.
Of ATP?
So the muscle runs on ATP. When the ATP runs out, it takes in glucose to make ATP out of it.
Okay.
Right? So let's say the muscle runs on the glucose. Okay? Now the glucose drops in, and if your muscle used up that glucose, you finished, you did exercise, the glucose is used up. So now the body has other ways to get energy, and everybody that's on a diet, some kind of diet, knows about diets. You know, there's Atkins diet and or different types of diets that either it's going to take fat or it's going to take muscle and it's going to convert it into glucose, and convert that into ATP, or maybe directly to ATP. I don't know, but it's going to use different chemicals in your body to give that muscle strength, so that muscle can still keep on going. And what's interesting, this is just something interesting. Each muscle has its own storage, so they don't share. Which means when this muscle gets used up, you can still do it with this muscle because it has its own storage. Now, the brain has a storage of glucose. When the brain's glucose storage gets used up, it cannot take any other, it doesn't have any other way of getting energy. So my theory was that the brain having less ATP is going to start deciding on where to put emphasis on. Where am I going to use my energy? So it's going to use your energy on, on fight, flight, or freeze. It's because you use your energy on breathing and seeing and hearing. The first thing that it's going to start saving on energy is going to be your prefrontal cortex, which is, decision making,
intelligence,
human intelligence, basically. Inhibitions, like doing things you don't want to or not doing things you do want to, which is why most of the time you're going to overeat at night when you're tired. It's because you're tired and that part of the brain is not working as well anymore. Okay, so, but then what they did studies, and this is that that the difference in energy that the brain uses. So what I said was, like this, I didn't finish. If you use your energy for one of these mental energy stressors or mental energy suckers,
even the micro ones,
what happens is that you're using up ATP. and the brain only has so much glucose to give you, and it doesn't have any more. It can't get it from other sources, so it's going to have to wait for new glucose to drip in, and in between, your brain is not going to work as well. So things are going to be harder for you to do. It's even just regular work is going to be harder for you, because if you'd rather be at the beach than just working, is going to be more difficult for you. Right. Now, thing is that turns out this was like another moment I was like, oh, come on. That the brain, when the brain does very difficult functions. So I wanted to say, again, I again forgot that choice, noise, and change are 3 very difficult functions for the brain. So when
is it not prefrontal cortex stuff? That's just like that's like high level stuff.
It could be. I don't know if noise is prefrontal cortex. I'm not sure exactly about that. I mean, now you're going to have to become the biologist. But when the brain works really hard, it only uses between 1 and 5% more energy. So let's say if it worked hard all day, it would use between 1 and 5% extra energy. So they don't really know very well how the brain works, right? It's one of the places that are still, very mysterious to us. But it doesn't sound like a 1% difference would have that effect. So I read more, and there was a different thing, that the brain actually, they don't even know what the brain does with the little bit of storage it has. They don't think that the brain uses it regularly. So what they realized was that the brain just takes glucose straight from the blood and makes ATP without storage. So if you have less glucose in your blood, you're going to have less ATP, which is why energy drinks give you a lot of sugar and they make your brain work, at least in the short term. Then it gets dysregulated. We'll talk about that in a minute. But so the glucose just keeps on, instead of dripping into the storage tank, they drip in directly and give you ATP. Now, what happens is there's a machine, I'll call it because I'm not a biologist and I can probably say some long word, but there's a machine that actually takes the glucose that drips in from the brain and turns it into ATP. Now, stress, and any stress, if you just were in an accident, your brain doesn't work as well. And if anybody was in an accident, it's any stress for a few different reasons. Okay, one of the reasons is because it gives you adrenaline. So that adrenaline gives you a burst of energy, like an energy drink. It gives you a burst of energy, but they kind of make that machine not be so efficient. So from many different angles, like 3 or 4 different angles, I remember, like that they make that machine work less efficiently. So we're talking about big stressors, smaller stressors, but the idea of being stressed, of stress on your brain, any stress is going to affect how that machine works. Now, actually, obviously, doing some little stressor where somebody said boo is not going to affect it in the same way. But if somebody says boo, a lot of times they start getting together and that machine doesn't work as well. When that machine doesn't work as well, your brain it takes each drip of blood to take the glucose from it out and make ATP out of it. It makes less ATP. What ends up happening is that your brain has less ATP to play with. So we end up having the same effect of the brain needs to decide what to do with the ATP, and it decides to keep it on, keeping you alive and giving the least for the prefrontal cortex.
So this new understanding takes away the idea of a storage and says there is still...
I don't want to go back to the old understanding because it's a little confusing, the going back and forth.
Right, but this new understanding, and basically it's you still have your hashkaf, you still have your understanding.
It still backs. I was happy I found it. It still backs. And the truth is, the thing is,
but there's a budget. The ATP, there's a budget for.
There is a budget, exactly, and it gets and you're not. It's basically you're not getting enough of it, right? So it gets used up. So it doesn't directly get used up because it's in the brain and you use it.
Right.
But you're basically killing the machine that's making it.
Converts it, basically.
That converts it.
Now
I'll tell you what really happened.
1 second. I just want to acknowledge that's very cool, like just imagery. Like you have fuel, the ATP, it's going through a machine, and that machine like says where the ATP should go, and you're saying stress, or the studies say that stress gunks the machine, and then boom, you have less ATP to deal with. That's very cool.
Yeah. Now I want to tell you, I knew that it has to be backed scientifically or biologically, because I knew the effects of it. We all know the effects of it. Choice, it's known. Mark Zuckerberg has the same jeans and hoodie or whatever, and they say Barack Obama had the same color suits or ties, and maybe even he didn't want to make any. They basically all said that using their choices are gonna use up their choice making ability, and they want to save it for big choices. Steve Jobs. So there's a lot you'll search. So this is the only part of. I looked up online, like in writing the book, I wanted to get whatever is out there and put in my book, right? And everything that was there online was, so the only thing that I could find things about online was the stressor of choice, which is very well known. Now the stressor of noise to me is basically keeping one tab open while doing another tab. So if I'm talking to you and I get a phone call and I say, hello, and I'm kind of trying to remember what we were talking about so I could go back, and I'm in the middle of a meeting, goodbye. So that was noise, that's a stressor. And now you could have stronger stressors. So let's say if you're busy thinking about how this works, even if you listen to me, it's going to be a stressor on your brain, and you're not going to have listened to me as well.
I do feel like, after there was like a technical issue, after that technical issue was solved, I'm here.
You're here, right?
Like
you see?
Completely here.
So I know that it's true. Now, I wanted to figure out the biology of it, because it was like, I didn't think that the biology is going to negate what's true for me, right? It like the outcome is true, right? And that's where I came from. I wish I could tell you guys that I figured it out biologically, and then I made a training on it, and
you have a lab down here.
I have a lab. No, I have a lab, and I took somebody's brain. So I have a lab, meaning a lot of labs, where I took people's brain from the outside, right?
Yeah.
It was non-invasive lab, and then I said change and noise and choice. Noise, change is what I didn't deal with a lot. I didn't explain over here.
Can you describe noise a little more? Meaning you're saying sticky notes are noise. It's a little less invasive than the phone call. It's more like your scenery.
So so let me explain to you, because there's some little confusion. Maybe they're the same, but I kind of separate it into two: change and noise. So change means, if I were to tell you now, okay, let's sit on the couch, right? The first few minutes you wouldn't be listening to me as well. It would be a little bit like you would feel disoriented. Your brain has to get used to where it's sitting. I could make up, again, this is made up, I don't know this from studies, but your brain has to know where the door is, so in case there's a fire it has to run, right? It has to kind of know where the threats may come from. That's what I make up. But the fact is, I actually, in my trainings, I tell everybody to switch seats. And people get edgy, and they ask me, like, when are we switching back? And I'm like, you're here for like 3 hours and you want to switch back? Like, it's like you own that seat? Like, well, what's the problem? And you feel uncomfortable with change. And so there are a lot of different changes. What I told the therapist was, like, I told a bunch of therapists by now, but like, you see a client for 45 minutes and then you have to do some executive. Then you have a 15-minute break. What do you do during that 15-minute break? So usually it's writing notes and doing some executive work. Like I'll call back somebody, and then again, right? 45 minutes, 15 minutes, 45 minutes, 15 minutes. By the time they get the lunch break, where they had an hour set aside for lunch and doing some stuff, they do nothing. Because they say you have no idea how tiring it is. To see people, it's really tiring. So I told them, how about try this? Try 45 minutes and then do nothing for 15 minutes. Just do nothing. Play Candy Crush. Don't use your brain for anything else. just, and then another 45 minutes, and then do nothing. And the guy comes back to me, and hey, I have no idea. I thought people drain me. They don't. I'm just as excited for my afternoon sessions. And now, they felt, and I heard it a few times, and I'm not telling all therapists to do this because it's accepted that you write notes right after the session. It's the best time to write notes because that's when it's the freshest. But writing notes takes a different part of your brain than a session. A session, you're into the client and you're understanding and empathizing, and when you're writing notes, you're kind of like analyzing and compiling and shortening and deciding what to write and how to write. It uses a very different part of the brain. Now, if you go and you do some executive stuff and you pay your bills or call back somebody and whatever, you really went and you switched your brain to something else. Now, it's okay the first time. You go to your second client, you switch back to the empathy brain. And then you switch back again, and you switch back again. This is not a physical change, but it's a mental change. And that change drains our brain as well. So, now, I'm not telling people don't change, meaning seeing one client and then seeing another client is also a change. And just playing around those 15 minutes is also a change, but it's not as strong a change. But definitely we can minimize change, right? But change, we have to know, is a stressor, and if it's a stressor, again, it hurts that machine.
It's interesting. Like there's that concept of makom kavua. Like when you're part of a shul, you should have a seat. That's your seat.
Interesting. I never thought about it, but
it's like there's like a concept, like
that's your place, and that's because that's where you're used to, and if not, literally your brain is not so comfortable. Very interesting.
That's interesting. And then so you're talking about noise, change, and
choice and change. Yeah. So I actually have big story. But if I'm sitting here, and somebody comes and asks me a question, so the first thing that happened is there is noise, right? I'm middle of talking to you and is asking the question. Now I can tell that guy, I'll answer you later, and that's when it's just noise, right? Because I was staying with you, went to him a little, and then came back to you. Then if I tell him, okay, what's your question? It's like, oh, that. Let me think. Okay, that's the answer. Yeah, actually, I think you should do that. And if that doesn't work, then come back to me. And then I come back to you, and I'll be like, what were we talking about? So here there's a little time that gets lost in getting to know what we're talking about. But really, what happens is I changed into something else, and I changed back to you, right? I changed even from having just a conversation, a cavalier conversation, and then thinking about something, right? So there was a change. So there were two changes, and I'm always thinking about something else, but there were two changes, and so that's where change comes in. We had noise and change, right?
It's fine. I'm like applying it to my work and like what I do.
What I want to say is, now, so we had, if I decided not to listen to him if it was noise, if I decided to listen to him and answer him, there was change. Now tell me, what's the third thing that happened over here? I had to decide if I should listen to him or not, so that was choice. That was like my story with the three stressors. So what's the story with your work?
No, so I'm thinking like with my work, like it happens all the time. People come to my desk and they ask me questions, and like I have my emails I have to get to, and like I'm answering emails, I'm answering them, answering them.
Yeah, and it's the switch that really kills that machine in your brain.
Right.
Yeah.
It's also not nice. Someone comes to you,
it's like assuming that you're not busy now, or that my thing is more important, right?
Right.
Yeah, and sometimes it's an emergency, right? I'm not saying like close the doors, right? But yeah, people get used to that. Like this guy that met me, he knew that he's meeting me for a half hour. Nobody comes to my office in that half hour because everybody knew already that if you just knock into my office, unless it's really important, the 99% chance I'm just going to say move on, right? So even my boss used to call me. I would pick up the phone and say, hi, is this important for right now? So he said no. So I said, I'll call you back. And then I had a piece of paper in front of me, wrote down the extension so I didn't have to remember that I have to call him back. And then when I finished what I was doing, I would say, oh, who do I have to call? Some extensions I didn't pick up. I just wrote down extension numbers, right? I wouldn't even pick up. My boss I had to pick up. And you think that he would he would not like me because I didn't answer him right away. But the opposite was true. He was like, "Okay, the guy is busy. He's doing something, right?" So so I did have some noise, and especially extensions called in. I felt like at least that if I call and I call him back, there was a little bit noise, but there wasn't that change, and the minimal change possible, right?
It's an incredible, like, the fact that also that you figured these things out on your own. Did you come up with these terms, change, noise?
So the terms came after. I had the terms were actually way after. Was when I started training people in my department, my managers, and whoever was willing or whatever. I was training people, and then outside the company, people had the problem. I said, like, I could give you an easy solution. I came down to do the training, and I had to come up with something snappy. I knew there were 3 stressors. I think maybe in the beginning I had 2 or 4. I don't remember, but and somehow choice, noise, and change. I was actually even busy, if I should say, choice, noise, and change. Noise, choice, and change. Which one's going to be best? Remember my wife telling me, just go with what the way you work through it. Just be straight. So the words definitely are not just they came over time, right? Yeah.
So all this that you're talking about has to do with work, office work, stuff like that. How can your program apply to other spaces?
So honestly, I only sell it for work because usually people are willing to spend money to make money, right? So I'm telling you, let's say somebody's in a bottom line employee and you want to get there. And I started off actually with a story about responsibility. Responsibility is what really gets you money. You want to take more responsibility. And it's either hard for you or you're scared that it's going to be very stressful. It doesn't have to be. That's right. Now, how people have used it outside of work, and that's what I've gotten back, is that outside of work, listen to this one. Somebody called me like maybe a year and a half after. So before I did bigger trainings, I had people, I gave myself a number and had people call me. I'd like to know. I even called people a year after to see how it's working out. I wanted to get feedback and make it, just make my program better. And so she tells me, what, I love your program, everything. You have no idea how it changed my life, my way I work. But I can't be on the phone while I'm cooking. And I hate that. And, always for a second, it's like, I wish I could just be right all the time. But I started, in coaching you ask questions. I started asking questions. What do you mean you can't be on the phone? If you're on the phone, then you do the wrong measurements or so. And in asking, she realized, no, it's just too hard for me. So what does it mean it's too hard for you? You could do it. It's too hard, meaning you're gonna be knocked out afterwards. No, but it's just, and then she realized like this, right? So I actually have people measure their stress from 1 to 10 before they start, and then measure their stress level from 1 to 10 once they finish or later on. And my goal is, in companies I guarantee it, like I'll get them to below 4 or below. So she realized that she can't absorb anymore having a stress level of 6 or 5 or even 4. So cooking and being on the phone at the same time and measuring or whatever brings you up to a level of 6. And she was not willing to absorb that anymore. So many people, yes, you're working at a stress, most people answer, where is your stress level at 11, 12, right? Right. So working at a stress level of 10 may seem okay for you, but then once you get to a stress level of 3 and you're working and you're being productive, you'll not tolerate above 5. You just won't tolerate it. And what happens is, this goes back to the books, is people that do my program, and they taste what it's like to work like a stress level of 3, right? Or what they consider 3, obviously. But basically, they realize what it's like, and then they'll follow whatever it is, and then the desk gets a little messy. They go to 4, to 5. Once they hit 6, they like go crazy. They're like, wait, something's wrong here, and then they go back and they say, let's do it again. Now, I myself, I shouldn't be saying this, but I'm not always doing things the way it should be. It's just as soon as I get stressed, as soon as I feel like something is like, I realize, hey, what I do is when I was in the office, I would lock my office door. Right, there was nothing, phones off. 15 minutes, everybody's lot took me. It took me less, but I knew 15 minutes is enough, and I reorganized and did everything the way I needed to do it. So things happen, right, and then you'll go back to it because you tasted what it's like, and you know the concepts, and you felt the concepts, you experienced it, right? So that's really.
So I said, so what do you think of multitasking?
I could ask. Actually, I'll ask you the question.
Okay.
You're a smart guy. What do you think of multitasking?
I think it's efficient. Is it not?
Do you really? So, first of all, what is multitasking? Explain it to me. Tell me a story of multitasking.
The first thing that came to my mind was driving and on the phone. Driving and talking on the phone.
Okay, so driving and talking on the phone is a little bit different because although you might have some noise if you have to short stop or something, but if not, it's mostly muscle memory, or I don't know what to call it, eye coordination memory. You're not really using, I don't think you're even using your prefrontal cortex. I'm not a biologist, but yeah, it's not another task, right? It's like background music. It's like I'm seeing this wall at the same time as I'm talking to you. It's not considered another task. So come up with a different multitasking.
Okay, I'm thinking of watching a video while doing office work. Like not like high level stuff, just like what are filing.
So what ends up happening is, okay, you either miss stuff from the video. Would you watch a video in the office that you don't want to miss a word from the video? Would you watch that while you're doing something else? No, because so you're not really multitasking, and it's not my thing. You're switch tasking. It's a industry word, but you're basically, because you're going to lose words from the video while you're working, right? So you're switching from video to working, and maybe some of it, like I don't know if like there's some of it is like driving with the video. I don't really know. But also, what's going to happen is, if the guy says an interesting thing, your work is gonna get hurt. Either you're going to make a mistake, or you're going to do things slower, right? So you're really switching from one thing to another. So it could be also watching a video is also a little bit like driving. I get it, or like listening to music while working, which is not. Doesn't take the same amount of stress.
I guess I don't know.
But what people call multitasking generally is like. I'm on the phone and I'm on the computer and somebody's at my desk at the same time and they feel very good. That's like the the high that an executive usually takes, right? It's like, and the phone is ringing. So I'll call you back in 5 minutes. I'm on the other line, and just wait 1 minute. I'll be with you, and while I'm answering emails at the same time, right? And
you're saying people like that?
People like that for a lot of different reasons. That's interesting that you said that. We'll get to that, but. People like that.
Why?
Yeah.
Why do people like that?
First of all, the adrenaline, it feels good, and it's not just adrenaline. It's and I didn't read up before this, but I know that you get some what other like dopamine. You get dopamine, serotonin. It just literally feels good, and it literally is addictive. Straight up, right?
To what?
Dopamine is addictive to people.
To do multiple things?
Doing multiple... being in that situation of like, I don't know what to do, I need to let me run from one thing to the next. That is addictive just for the I call it natural cocaine, right? So it's addictive. Now, it also, for most people...
To be a macher.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I actually need to work on with people is to get rid of their need to want to be important, or their need to be busy. So if you're always busy and then you feel needed, you feel wanted, you feel valued. And if I tell you, if I can really take away the busyness from you, all of a sudden what's going to happen? I got this I went out with my wife, on vacation. She said the only thing is I can't have my smartphone, and I thought like the business, I was CFO, it's going to fall apart without my smartphone. deal was half hour at night, and whenever like she goes to the bathroom, right? And she went to the bathroom, and I take the phone, and it's like, what are the emergencies? And there was nothing that couldn't be answered by tonight, right? And I didn't know. 15 minutes later, she tells me like, or 10 minutes later, what happened? And I realized like I was feeling low. And then I knew what I was feeling low about. I was like, since when? Since I checked my emails and I realized that the world runs without me, right? So there is something to wanting to feel needed, and then people think if they're busy all the time, they're more valued by their boss. To a certain extent, it can be true for some bosses where they see he's busy, like he's really loyal to the company. But at the end of the day, bosses are not stupid, and they look at the actual value the person brings, right? And when the person is busy all day, how confident is the boss that if I give you something, it's going to get done for sure, 100%? Not as confident. And if you show up as everything that I need to take care of is getting done, actually give me more. The boss is not stupid. He knows how valuable that is. He doesn't have to see you busy, running around. You can be really calm, and I'm saying this from experience. I was calm, and I got promoted, and I got more departments. And every time there was a chance to take a project, most executives are usually like, I'm too busy. I'll take it, but I was like, I really can't. And I was like, always, yeah, give me more, right? And the first thing everybody says about productivity, yeah, I know, you have to delegate. But really it's about taking responsibility for it, right? Now, there is also responsibility around delegation. Are you sure the other person is going to do it? You have to follow up. So there's a lot of things to learn, but I don't know which question, but I think I answered it.
I think you did.
Yeah. So as you can see, during this, me losing my train of thought, is my ADD. I could either hyper focus on one thing or I lose focus.
What are you thinking of besides this?
I don't know. I probably thought of something. Oh, I hyper focused on what I was saying, so I lost track of whatever you asked. Right? I don't know. But this is my ADD coming into play. That's how I roll.
Okay. Does alcohol relax the ADD? First, you have to choose which cup.
Alcohol, whatever relax. I'm not going to do alcohol now.
Okay.
But alcohol. If you want to make a l'chaim, I'll pour some.
Sure.
Do you want to do that?
Let's make a little l'chaim.
Maybe I'll take a little sip to be courteous. Okay.
Well, we'll talk about your course in a second. So l'chaim, hatzlacha to the course.
Yes, hatzlacha to the course, and hatzlacha to the many people that come to the course. I think that these people are really people that see the course, see the flyer or hear things, and then they want to come, are really hurting. And these people that are really hurting, I want for them to get out of that, right? People that aren't hurting so much, like me, I didn't come up with it only because I was hurting. People aren't hurting so much, are not ending up on my course usually, right? So let's look at those guys.
People hurting out there. L'chaim.
Chaim. Not that bad. Maybe I should have taken more.
Yeah. So fine. We have your program. We talked about the main things that you focus on. We talked about where you came from, how you created this. Let's talk about the course. First of all, have you done a course before?
Yeah.
To this size, to this magnitude?
No. So the way I did it started off obviously one-on-one in the company, outside the company. And then I started doing courses for 3 people, 5 people within companies. And then I did a few courses, 2 in Brooklyn and 2 in Muncie, courses of 10 to 12 people, something like that. Smaller size, and it was like around a table, around like a discussion. It wasn't like...
I was going to ask, what is a course like?
There was no stage, right?
What does a 10 people course look like?
And it looks more like a course. I had a PowerPoint, and I put in as many experiential things as I was able to put in. As I said, I'm trained in psychodramatic bodywork. Psychodrama is all about experiential therapy, but it wasn't. It was 10 people sitting around the table. I had them switch places. Right, that was one thing. One of the things I actually used to teach my course in Cope Institute. One of the first places I taught my course, I taught it in a class. So I told the guy to set a timer for 10.5 minutes and that it's really important. And 10 minutes into the class, I get to the front and everybody is seated and I start the class and I see one guy with a watch, probably, I don't remember, but I did it a few times at COP, or more than a few. And, generally some older gentlemen. And I told them, I see you have a watch. You do me a favor? He said, yeah. You tell me when it's 10 minutes? Sure. Anyway, I go through the first, 10 minutes of the class. And I can already see before, 10 minutes, it comes 10 minutes. Basically, 10 minutes, it's 10 minutes. And then I ask the guy from the alarm, I ask the guy from the watch, I say, could you tell me what I said the past minute? He's like, I have no idea. So what happened was, from 2 minutes he was looking at his watch, like every 2 minutes or so. And then like when he got to 7 minutes, he was looking every half a minute. By 8.5 minutes, he was looking every 10 seconds. And not just that, the person next to him, 8 minutes, like tells him like this, like, your watch. So they really got to see how the noise didn't let them listen to me. He didn't know, he was like, he lost out on the first 10 minutes so I recapped him obviously, but basically he lost out on the first 10 minutes of what I said, which is what happens when people have an Apple Watch. And that's like, to me, it's the biggest, I would never have somebody, like, it's crazy.
We don't want to be sued by Apple.
Actually, I would love that. That would be my dream, to
right.
get sued by Apple. So they look at their watch, and on their watch, they see who's calling. And they're not doing it. I'm just looking who's calling, right? I'm supposed to... Now, you get, first of all, it's noise, right? But then you're for a second, you're remembering if it's important or not. And then you make a choice. And you're doing that constantly.
Like a person
and it kills you. And you don't realize that it kills you. And then you just say, what did he say? I can hear on the phone when people go to their Apple Watch or on their messages. When I do sometimes coaching calls, I say, hey, what's going on? Oh, I'm sorry, I was just looking, right? So, like, I can hear, like, no feedback or whatever. Like, it doesn't work. You can't do two things at once. I think that's my answer to multitasking, or I don't even know.
But also, like, what
that's
the course looks like.
So that's why I did the course then. That was the experiential part, but mostly it was teaching and with the PowerPoint. This is the first time that I'm doing the course on a larger scale, and
how's that going to look different? So
how it's going to be different is that I'm going to be on stage, and I'm not going to have a PowerPoint, believe it or not. I was planning to have somewhat of a PowerPoint, but then I found out it was very sunny, so it's like people are going to start squinting, and it's going to take half their brain away. So I actually brought a whiteboard for whatever I need. Didn't bring. I have a whiteboard.
You're gonna have one of these guys, one of these mics.
Oh, that I'm gonna have. Yeah, one of the mics, or
like,
I don't know,
what's his name?
Maybe one of those mics.
What's his name? That coach guy everyone listens to. Tony
Robbins.
Tony Robbins. Yeah. One of these guys.
Yeah. So yeah. Now, what's going to happen over there is I'm not going to talk much. In the beginning, I'm going to introduce myself, so it may take, I don't know how long. I'm still working to kind of condense it. In the end, I'm going to review everything. The reason I'm reviewing everything in the end, all the ideas, is so that people don't need to be busy writing throughout. Oh, this is a good idea, I want to write it down, so they can really focus on what's going on. And I'm going to tell them at the end, I'm going to go through it with you. And throughout, I will not talk or lecture for more than 7 minutes straight. I'll take a breath in between. No, I'm kidding. I will not talk for more than 7 minutes straight. It's all going to be experiential. So, it'll look like having people come on stage, doing different things, playing out things, very interesting.
It'll be fun.
It'll be fun. I'll have people be the brain, have a conversation with the brain. Then I'll have people working on their own, fixing. But it's going to be fun.
Actually, let's talk about attention, because seems like that's one of your main things, like holding attention. So, why is it that people pay attention to short, let's say TikToks? Like it holds people's attention for so many hours, but like reading a book, it's like
first of all,
old timers read books. Like, why? Where does attention get lost?
So the simplest thing is that the Twitter generation, 30 characters or whatever, 60 characters, I think so. I don't know, but everybody YouTube it. There's like thousands of answers, but definitely our attention span got shortened. So I basically looked up on Google, like, how long is people's attention span? I got 5 minutes, 7 minutes. I chose 7 minutes. I was like, give me a break. I can't, condense. But I think I may even, I'm trying to really not talk a lot. So to make it interactive and fun. I mean, I'm the only speaker there. I'll be talking for around, so it's four parts. The fifth part is a review. So it's 4 parts with breaks or lunch in between. And each part would be like an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and a half or an hour or something like that. I don't remember. So it's for like 5 hours of talking, and I want people to listen to the same guy for 5 hours. It's not going to happen.
Right.
At least not me yet.
How did you come up with the structure? Like, why? Like, not to do a lecture for 5 hours? Because I mean, we've all been to speeches and Dvar Torahs that just go on. Like, what advice could you give to those people? Like, to make your Dvar Torah interesting?
So, interesting. I could give advice. First of all, people's attention span is very. What advice? I mean, the simplest advice. It almost seems like I'm giving advice, like I'm starting to be a smart guy giving advice, but just make it shorter, right? Now there is something with talking. People ask me about public speeches. So in school, after the speech at the graduation ceremony and the mid-graduation ceremony we had, what I did was I made everything into commas and sentences, right? So I actually practiced before. First I was feeling stupid for practicing in front of the mirror until my wife told me that Churchill did that too. I was like, oh, okay. So
in good company.
Good company. But I was basically saying, hi, I've come here to, right? So you see it come now. Hi, I've come here to, right? So I've come here to meet you all. With the permission of Rabbi whatever, I will now say that, or it would be, hi, I've come here to meet you all with the permission of however okay? And people listen like that, right? They listen in commas, and if you know Nusach, and in singing, it's also, even Nusach, which isn't really singing a song, there is also a beat to it, because people like to listen to on beat. But it's not just the beat, it's that what I say is nobody is going to start schmoozing or start looking at their phone when you have that pause. The only time they're starting to look at that phone is when you talk. So don't be scared to pause. And Obama has those pauses. Some of those pauses are really of like, I am really hurt, right? So that it exaggerates the hurt, right? So some of them, give it, but you watch his speeches, he was really good at those pauses.
Yeah, it seems like you're a big fan of Obama's speeches.
Saying seems as if I said a lot of things, but yeah, Obama was a great speaker. He just speaks well, and it's not just as an orator, but when you see him at shows, he does always pause, talks in commas and periods. And usually when you give the Torah, what happens is you're nervous about how it's going to, you don't want people to stop listening, so you try to get everything in as fast as possible, and you hope that's going to get... Now that, when you talk, that's the only time that they're going to stop listening to you. So think about it. If I tell you now that I want to move on, you see, I grabbed your attention, didn't lose your attention.
That's right? Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah. Another thing, which I got from my wife, Wow, I'm mentioning her a lot. But listen, that's what it is. That's who I spend, most of my time with. And I get a lot of my insights from, right? So she told me to, when I get up, to just look around at the crowd, back and forth with a smile. She said to do it because it projects confidence, right? Now I realize there's a few more things that happen. One is I look around at each person, and now it's not a fear of the unknown, it's a fear of the known. I saw you, I saw you all, I saw how many people there are, I took the time to look at you, and now I'm talking to all of you. So the fear of the unknown is always the worst. Second of all, the crowd, when you're quiet and they see you smiling, they automatically are intrigued, and they feed off the fact that you're confident. So they may quiet down more, you'll notice, or they feed off your confidence, and then you can gain confidence from them feeding off it, right? So that's what I.
It's interesting about the smiling part. I noticed that my uncle, who's a shul rabbi, he does that. When he gets up to speak, like he takes a pause and he just looks around the crowd and like he smiles. It's like there's a very significant pause at the beginning of his speeches.
Interesting.
It's an interesting that they both do that.
I would think though that he may be doing it for a different reason, because he speaks to these people every week. I think it's like maybe it's like including everybody. Does he smile to each person, like smiles around to people?
He looks around. Yeah, general sweep of the room.
I don't know.
But it's just interesting that it was similar.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so tell me, but regarding this course, first of all, when is it?
It's Sunday, August 6th.
2023.
2023.
People watching this in
Yes.
18 years. So August 6th, and where is it going to be?
In Lakewood, New Jersey. It's going to be in the Eagle Ridge Golf Club. It's a nice place, gorgeous grounds. And we're going to have breakfast served. Breakfast is at 9:15 and it starts at 10 o'clock. I mean, most of the reason I decided to have breakfast served is because I wanted people to be there on time. And then we'll have lunch served, lunch buffet, and middle of the day. So we're taking care of you all day.
And they'll have you.
And they'll have me the rest of the day, yes.
That's awesome. Wow. It's an amazing thing. It's all I get the sense from what you're not just doing it for the financial part of it. Sort of like what you were talking about before about like the people who hurt during our l'chaim. There are people who are hurting and they need help.
I am very passionate about this, yes. And our world, and this includes the Jewish world, non-Jewish world, everywhere, is that real work. So there is already, people have this, like you don't have to work so hard, you don't have to work 17 hours a day. But there's this thing like working comes along with busyness and stress, and it's like, it's part of it. And that's what it is to grow, and I think that nobody realizes that there is a way out, there is a different way. There's a different way to work, grow, do more, take on more responsibility, and at the same time just be calm. If you go on YouTube, and this is what I was in the middle of saying it before, and I remember, you're going to search for calm at work, yeah? Choice may come up, and that's only, but then basic decisions, decision fatigue it's called.
Mm-hmm.
But then the only other thing is it's gonna tell you take meditation, go for a walk, sleep a lot at night, a lot of things on what to do once you're stressed. But it's almost like a given that you're gonna be stressed. And I don't take it as a given. I was not stressed at work. I was calm like anything. To me, work was literally, not always, but many times it was meditation. Think about it. Doing one thing and thinking only about that and nothing else is called another word for meditation. Now, you could have a fire in front of yourself. For me, it was an Excel sheet. But that's what I felt like. I was doing it for hours, and when I finished, I was like, wow. Just like that feeling that you get after doing meditation. Like I was out of it. I was just focusing on one thing, and it just felt really good. So, yeah, my wish is for the world to meditate while working, right? To really, yeah, that's, yeah, I wish that can, I wish for the financial aspect, obviously, I wanted to get big and become a billionaire, right? But there is that real passion that I have about this. And also about the way I train it and give it to people, which is again empowering people. And it feels good for me to empower people. So, I'm an executive coach as well. And in my executive coaching, I empower people. And I was like, once if I win the lottery, what am I going to do? I'm not going to tell you if it was after I bought the lottery ticket or not. But if I win the lottery, I was like, I'm going to coach 2 or 3 people. Something I enjoy and I love. Now, do I love coaching 10 people? 12, that becomes 10 people, more than 10 becomes too much for me, right? It's a lot. 10 is like the limit, but it's work. It's work. 2 people would be like what I would do, just because I really enjoy it. So
your flow state.
Yeah, so I love it. So, here it is also. It's like you talk, you open people's eyes, and people are like, wow, like I never thought about it that way. Right, that's really, and they get empowered through it, and then getting the phone calls afterwards, or me making the phone calls afterwards, and it's really nice.
And I've heard your tagline, success without the stress.
Yeah, boost, okay, like marketers are always busy, like this guy says, boost success, cut the stress. I guess there's like an action word in it. My tagline was success without stress. Now, the reason for me doing the tagline is I'll make everything shorter and simpler. That's like naturally, that's how I work. It's part of like what I do. So it's like just like any extra word, let's cut it out. But anyway, yeah, that's the tagline.
Awesome. Okay, Shea, thank you very much for meeting me and welcoming me into your home. And I wish you so much aslacha with this. It's an amazing thing.
And thanks for interviewing me.
Absolutely.
I don't know if this was an interview. It was a nice schmooze.
Tell people where they could find you. Websites.
But thanks for letting me talk for a long time.
Absolutely.
You can find me on sheamyski.com, SheaMyski.com, and to register for the event, it would be /events. So I'll say the SHEA, M as in Mary, as I said, Y, S as in Sam, KI.com /events. And I'm going to get my phone to get the phone number.
This is your phone. We're
So,
using the phone.
Could I get the phone number while we're using it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get the phone number here. Now, people get behind the scenes of podcasting. And the phone number, contacts.
We're doing a podcast? I didn't even realize.
Achieve more. So, the phone number is 845-445-8612. You can call or WhatsApp or text or leave a voicemail. Again, it's 845-445-8612.